Welcome to Four Seas One Family. How you doing, everybody? Hope you're having a good day. Right now, it's about, let's see, what it's 10:18 here on May 23rd here night. But I just want to jump in here with a few friends and talk a little bit about what U.S. President Biden said a couple hours ago in Japan. I just hope it wasn't off the cuff, because it can be quite scary. If you notice that I put a little map on as a thumbnail there of Taiwan with porcupine quilts coming out. But it's a reason, because I guess up to now, Taiwan has been using a porcupine strategy in many ways. But also this U.S. position of ambiguity, yeah, that's what it's called. I think, yeah, get the pronunciation right, is questionable for quite a heck of a long time. So Biden pumped up this, and let's see if I can bring this up on the screen here. U.S. Biden says the U.S. will defend Taiwan militarily if China attacks. Okay, and this is on the Times. This is the Times here, right? Times is not my favorite paper, but if you read down here at the bottom, President Joe Biden said Monday that the U.S. would intervene militarily if China were to invade Taiwan, saying the burden to protect Taiwan is even stronger after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That's a whole different cup of tea right there, right? It was one of the most forceful presidential statements in support of Taiwan in decades. Now, this can be quite scary. This can be quite scary because the news here ramped up like, a needle, of someone breaking the sound barrier. And it's popped up all over the news here. And I just hope it doesn't cause people to get misconstrued or getting the wrong impression, because this is not as simply as, as what people may think as it is in an appearance. I mean, here in the local papers, probably most of you can't read this, but basically, it puts things in perspective, reality, in reality at least. It mentions you can see here in English, the Taiwan Relations Act, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. But after this happened, I contacted a few of my friends, and they send me friends actually here in Taiwan and or in the region. And I just want to share some of their comments with you. I won't be able to put on the screen. I didn't have enough time, but this is a friend in a little bit south of me, said that the U.S. has enough experience fighting wars far, far away and beating its own economy up for the sake of saving face or proving its military prowess. Okay, we can move right along on that, because I guess when certain nations become, how would you say, militarily powerful and economically a world leader or reliant on things, and other nations in this case, they do have a tendency on putting their comments out there. Okay, there's some comments over here. See if I can pull this up on the other screen here. Okay, there you go. If you have any comments, you just put it right down the bottom and see if I can bring up on the screen here. But a little bit of caution, my friend added. A bit of caution from Taiwan should take it a long way when it comes to democratic promises from the West. Now, we know that, Ukraine was promised a lot of happiness from Western nations, especially those involved with NATO, that, if they become democratic, can just join NATO. And, that made their next door neighbor, Mr. Putin, quite nervous and anxious. But, he has his own objective. I don't want to talk a little bit about that. I just want to hear more about what my friends here in Taiwan think about this situation. And this is something, and my friend also said that, but this is something Taiwan should take into consideration while taking a stance against, the neighbors next door. This person said, I feel a humble approach to a peaceful cross-strait policy will benefit actually Taiwan, China and Taiwan. And I do agree with that. I mean, the freedoms that Taiwanese have here is just great, able to choose a lot of things. But of course, there's no utopia anywhere. But what's happening in Ukraine at the moment and what's happened in the past with Moldova and Crimea does ring bells up in people's minds right now, especially here in Taiwan. And also, just a quick reminder here that the Quad has been quite busy over here. And this was causing a lot of, especially nations here in Asia, Japan, and to some extent, a little bitty extent, the Philippines in this case. And they are kind of like worried about the overly invest physical structures in their country from China and possible future, how would you say, thumb pressing from China in the United States, Japan, Australia, that's right, India. They're getting together to put together their Quad alliance. And I guess China's aggressive stance preceded in a lot of ways recent attacks as far as Russia on Ukraine. And, we know what happened in 2014. So this is something I just wanted to share with some of my friends here and see if they can have the time to jump in there. I got a friend here that's apparently banned from social media for a particular reason. I'll find out that at another time. And hopefully I got two other friends here that hopefully will get in here. But this is something, let's get this out, get me out of the way here. This is what's going on right now. And Taiwan's particular Porcupine approach may be useful to it for a while, but how long will it last? How long could it last? I mean, Taiwan's porcupine defense strategy. I mean, how useful is it and for how long? Because, as they say, 泡沫化, right? Another friend of mine said that in his note here to me, he said that Biden wants no misunderstanding with China. He's being clear. There's a powerful ambiguity in our policy on this, at least by design, and I agree, by design. But it makes sense to clarify where we lean. We better let the neighbors next door, China, just focus on other things for now, which they will. Meanwhile, we push Taiwan to porcupine status as quickly as possible. But me, I wonder if that is the best approach. Of course, it's the best approach is just to let bygones be bygones and live their own without putting too much military fingerprint on anybody. And let me switch cameras over here. And this is something that hopefully both sides can abide by. Even though that, you know, if you want to look at historically, the leadership next door has never controlled this island. If you want to look at historical references, well, yes, compared to, will it be one day would Russia attack the United States and want to get Alaska back? Well, political references, historical references is a whole two different things. So we see how far that can go. Hey guys, if you have any comments, you know, put a note down on the bottom there, then I can pump it up here. And or if you, one of the people I contacted, if you let me know that you're around, I can pop you up here and hear your comments. But, you know, I just hopefully spend about 10 to 20 minutes online here to share what I've found here and what I hear from my friends here. You know, no one wants a war, you know, and we know what happened in the past in this environment, in this part of Asia, what happened when war was quite prevalent here. So we see. We got 3 shy people here online, so we see how far that'll get. So what else Biden said up here? See if I can go down the page here. Refresh here and see what we got. Having a very, very slow page refresh here. I wonder if that's by design or just because I just happen to be streaming and something is caught up here. See if I can get this back on the screen. Nope, it's not happening. It's not happening. So what do you guys think about this porcupine approach that's being taken on right now at this part? Okay, let me go up here. How you doing? Let's see if I can get this up here. Yeah, okay. I do have to, well, most nations are self-serving. Most nations are self-serving, most. What? Wait a minute. I got another comment here from a friend up here. Let's see if I can move this down. What do you think we should do? I wonder, TC, when we say we, if we as foreign nationals here, what should we do? Or what can we even do? What can we even do? I wish I can talk at this particular time more about some of the shills I come into contact with sometimes. Good guys personally, but a little bit different as far as the way they see China. But it says here, what do you think we should do? And I wonder if now in this situation, okay, TC, you're Taiwanese. There's not much, at least militarily, Taiwan can do, right? It's not like Taiwan can get up and pull out any other type of aggression. Okay, hold on. Let me move this down. Okay. Well, there's not much. Only thing you can, I think, what Taiwan should do is publicize it themselves more. Spend some money and going to other nations, even though it's a little bit hard, and to let people know, especially now, hit the iron while it's hot, right? Because what's happening in Ukraine, right? This is probably the best time for Taiwan to broadcast itself peacefully. We're Taiwan, and this is our situation today, and the neighbors next door are squeezing us a little bit tight. I think right now is the best time for Taiwan. I mean, the scenario of Taiwan number one. Maybe we can just let this play off of that. Taiwan does have a lot of influential people, involved in the arts and involved in the entertainment field and stuff like that. I think that'll be one good start. But as far as the administration does, politically, left, right, and stuff like that, I'm sure there's a lot of things that common folk, both local and foreign nationals, there's a lot of things that we really don't know what is said under the table between the Taiwanese and the United States and stuff like that. A lot of it could be wolf warrior type of chest banging, but what else can be done? I wish we can get another political scientist in here at this particular time, but I guess he's busy at the moment. And this me doing this stream right now is quite impromptu, but at least I can spend another 5 minutes here to get other opinions. But I guess I have a booming crowd of 3 people here right now. I'm trying to bring up the link I just had up with Biden. Okay, I think I got it back now. Maybe they'll nail me, and I can go further down the post. Okay. Here's something, and this is quite easy to see. It says that the U.S. traditionally avoided making such an explicit security guarantee to Taiwan. I'm not sure what Biden said could be even counted as a explicit security guarantee. Okay, and as far as I understand, he probably said that right off the cuff. Okay, right off the cuff, and to him, maybe appears to be something that's obvious, 理所当然, right? But it does put in a different type of fingerprint on the situation. I'm just waiting to hear what else the neighbors next door are going to add on it, because Taiwan isn't exactly in the same situation as Ukraine. They're a lot more militarily equipped, but still, as compared to the neighbors next door, it's impossible to link it to this. Okay, we'll go ahead. Let's put this up here. I think it's good to not talk about independence and don't put any faith in the U.S. And I've been doing this for 40 years. Okay, what? Okay, yes. Okay, I guess all nations are selfish, right? Especially when it involves the financial and political prowess of or goals of any nation. I guess it's true. You've been in the U.S. for 40 years, right? Yes, I do think that'll be a good overall policy, but Taiwan is already self-reliant, and that's one thing we have to admit. And you added something down here. You said U.S. politics suck. The media controls everything. Okay, well, where doesn't the media basically is being controlled by a particular political party? I'm not talking about government. I'm talking about like the authoritarian government, like next door, or some political, religious reference. You tell me one place that's not. Okay, you can probably name a few, but there's not many that has so much prowess or financial power as nations like the United States, China, Russia. Yeah, that's right. Russia is still up there. It may be a little crippled at the moment, but that's the situation that we are really in today. And media is a little sick everywhere as far as I see. And I see not only the politics, but I'm seeing other references as the people say the dark web situation. I don't believe much in that, but there is a form of those Trumway Illuminati do exist, and the financial how would you say powers coordinating political thought and stuff like that, and the religious realm of influence is really quite tricky part of what I see happening in the United States. And you also added down here to remain independent. Don't talk about, what to become. Okay, fine. So like I said before, you notice I used the term self-reliant. And it mainly, a lot of this started when local manufacturers here figured that by going next door to how would you say, manufacture their product and build their return on investment, 报酬率, right? Most of us knew that, in the end, they will be running out or running back here to Taiwan. But I guess, this is what it is. Money talks, and that other stuff walks and moving right along. Another comment from we'll go ahead. Okay, well, oops, I pressed that already. Okay, so, but I just wanted to jump in there for a little bit, and it's not bad for me just to pop up here, but I wish I had a little bit more time to arrange this. But my comments from my friends here are quite interesting, and this view of this porcupine status is something that I in the past did not think too much about. But I think I'll look into it more. I do have a copy of the white papers and stuff like that that I've been reading at least twice a year, at least twice a year. But the situation that's happening right now between Russia and Ukraine, and so some cases Moldova, has caused people out here to be a little bit more concerned about what's being said in the media and stuff like that. So I just wanted to jump in here real quick. Oh, wait a minute. Let's bump up here. Yes, China has a lot more financial hold than Russia throughout the whole world. Well, is it really a hold, or other nations have just found themselves more reliant on the manufacturing or production base in China? Well, we all know that a lot of big companies are just totally pulling out really fast. I mean, we know about big companies like McDonald's pulling out, right? Apple shut down there, Renault shut down, and the list goes on and on. I'm talking about in Russia, I'm talking about first, I should say. But a lot of companies have pulled out of China and looking towards places like Thailand and especially Vietnam, and out of this whole mess here. Vietnam may be a big, will probably end up winning big out of the mess. Now, I can't talk too much for some reasons about what's going on has been going on in Shanghai and now going on in Beijing with the lockdown, but that also adds to the mess. Going back over here to TC here. Yes, it is a mess. It is a mess, TC. Unraveling, it is unraveling a lot of things. And maybe if you give me another 2 days, you'll see what's coming out on that. China's watching the GOP continues to roll back civil rights and voting rights, and also sexual reproduction rights, right? Things can get, bad enough that China could take advantage of the situation. The thing is, you and I both know that anytime people are overly indulged or overly concerned about their freedoms, right? It's a ticking time bomb when different opposing groups in a democratic nation spend more time fighting each other and not staying aware or cognitive of the outside influence they may be getting. Some of them even know that they're getting outside influence, right, from maybe the neighbor next door or other nations that would like to see America implode on themselves, such as sending financial support to certain groups in the United States that oppose each other, and just sit back and watch them implode. Basically, it's Stranger being fought. What how would you say? Winning a war without fighting. Sending troops. Let your opponents tear themselves apart, and that's what's happening right now. I mean, we see that in the States where we got racial disparities going on, sexual disparities and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if a lot of people who are opposing each other so much are, how would you say, concerned or aware that they're being controlled from the outside. Now, I got a friend coming in here in a few minutes. So I think he's setting up something here. So you need to connect your mic, and then I can get you in here. So he just bounced back up. So he's going to try to shoot back in here again. So we see. Make sure you're using a browser like Chrome or Firefox. You can get in here. So a friend of mine would get in here. But what bothers me a lot is a lot of people who, how would you say, old school protesters. They forget that they can be remotely controlled by outside influence or nations that are really looking to take control of you. See the core of democratic nations like the United States crumble upon itself. A lot of them are just not aware. So I'll see if we can get back in here and you can join this show. Now, remember, this is quite impromptu. Yeah. Drink some water here. Sometimes the total freedom can make people have what I like to call all the time selective amnesia. Okay, she doesn't pull back in here. We'll go. I didn't know you were in here for such a long time. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Boy, I'm aging female. The craziness in U.S. media about the disparities in sex and race are overly exaggerated. In what way do you mean overly exaggerated? Because by you being in the States right now, and me being over here, there is a great possibility that there's something that I don't even understand or are able to absorb here. Can you maybe point in the direction that a person like me may not be watching or paying attention to? That'd be great if you can explain. And I'm sorry, I didn't know. You're a female. And you and I have been coming in contact on this channel for about 2 years almost. I'm sorry. So let's see if the other connection here can be made, and you can get in here, and you don't have to hear my ranting mouth. So let's see what we got here. Yeah. If you can, we'll go. What do you mean? The media is how would you say? Exaggerating the sexual disparities in the United States in their media production presentations, stuff like that. I'm quite curious. Okay. Coming up here in 28 minutes, so I didn't just planned about 15 minutes here or 20 minutes at the most. So just see what we got here. Okay, one of my friends tried to get in here, but maybe some equipment problem. Okay, here we go. Let's bring this up then. For example, the Asian sponsor said, oh, okay. It wasn't Asian. Okay. From what I understand, it wasn't either, but I always have, from what I understand, it wasn't either. Okay. It wasn't either. But what happened last week in Buffalo, the shooting with a certain person, 18-year-old went crazy and posted some kind of 宣言 manifesto, that was totally racist. And what do you think about that? We'll go ahead. That's something. Yeah, I have to agree. After looking back on what's happening, a lot of things when it comes negativity or hate or something like that, when it's a something popular or you don't choose, it's always something the media pays. How would you say plays on to get paid? They play up on the fears to get paid from people. So that's something. Yeah, that's what I'm agreeing to. That's what I'm saying. That's yes. Yes, I can see that. Okay, I got another person trying to get in here, and okay, here we go. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna open this up to another friend up here. How you doing? How you doing, Vincent? You live? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I just got out of wrestling. Kind of sweaty, but I'll
Oh.
shower.
You're looking good and strong. Okay, you're live right now. I just want to let you know. Okay.
Yep.
How's the temperature down there in Pingdong?
It's just humid. It's been raining a lot. Yeah.
The humidity down there, the humidity up here, to me, is totally different. When people down in Pingdong say, "Oh, it's humid," it's like, can you see rain is dropping off my face? Hey, I know you've been busy, and I've been ranting here all by myself for a little bit, but you probably know what I'm talking about. Earlier today, I threw some dimes on you about what President Biden said, or something that came off the cuff out of his mouth. And to be honest, me personally, Biden has been a little bit dizzy to me in some situations, a lot of situations, not only now, but in the past. What do you think about what the words that came out of his mouth about him saying that the U.S. will depend? He used the word will defend Taiwan militarily if the neighbor next door comes knocking on the door here. You have any thought about that, or what can you say?
I mean, I would say it's not surprising that he said that and the way he said it. Now, I know a lot of times, especially at his age now, it's hard to take everything that he says, as the policy, right? Because he stumbles on his words sometimes. There's no doubt about it. But everything he said is, I think, from the looks of it, directly in line with the way U.S. foreign policy is going right now. Right. If this was 30 years ago, there might be pushes for U.S. troops to be on a military base somewhere here and all that, right? Guns blazing, the way they do it in Africa, the way they do it in the Middle East. But now you see with the Ukraine war, you see a shift. There's a different approach now. We will recognize you. We will give you all the aid that you need. We're not necessarily going to commit 100%. It's incremental, right? And so we've seen with Ukraine, U.S. boots aren't on the ground, but U.S. weaponry or some U.S. supplied weaponry is being used. U.S. advice on logistics, U.S. data on where certain Russian generals are and all that stuff is being fed to them, right? And the U.S. has led the charge as far as the sanctions. France, Germany, a lot of these countries are very hesitant on the sanctions at first. I think a lot of them were thinking, let's just appease them. They did that twice. It didn't work out. Historically.
Let me put more cream on that though, because United States, we got something called Vietnam behind us, right? Then we got the Afghanistan pullout, which is totally screwed up.
Yep.
And let's not even mention the cost. And the days where any nation tries to go in another nation as Rambo and shoot it up all over the place, and the John Wayne type of, how would you say, image, that's gone, I think, forever. And
it's only gone for a while. Because you think about it, only in maybe the last 200 years, say European powers could just bulldoze their way into other places, right? Before that, maybe there's a disease factor in the Americas. In Africa, it wasn't until the 1800s. In Asia, maybe they gained some traction in the 1600s, 1700s, but it wasn't until the 1800s that the technological gap was big enough that you
Okay.
could send some guys in there and
Right.
do what you wanted, right? Before then, resistance was stiffer because the technological gap wasn't big.
Hmm.
Um, nowadays, nowadays, when you're not talking about terrorist cells, you're talking about Russia, you're talking about China. Even if they have economic problems, even if they have, if their regimes are always paranoid about keeping the people in line,
Hmm.
they got modern weapons. You know, they have maybe similar, if not necessarily as high quality, they have somewhat similar capabilities on paper, right? So U.S. can't behave the same way with these kind of threats, in my opinion.
I'm gonna turn another way. Okay, you know, my thumbnail says Taiwan's porcupine, Taiwan the Haozhu, right? I put that up there, but I want to jump into something that hopefully won't go too far from here, and I'm gonna have to go back here to Uruguay. I think she's in California or someplace in the West Coast. Yes, look at what's happening in Ukraine right now.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 days from now, I have an interview that I'm going to post online. I interviewed a director who she was on her way to Cannes. I interviewed her before she head out the door to Cannes, and because she was involved with taking refugee Ukrainian children out of Ukraine. She traveled to Ukraine to take the children out into Romania, where, you know, she had set up a program to take care of them. And this is something I want to hear from you. I was going to call you and talk to you about this before, but since you're here, I'm going to grab you because you're so damn busy. And hey, guys, by the way, if you have a chance, check out Vincent's channel. He's a martial artist. he has philosophy. But let me get my question out here. Stuff like this is happening in Ukraine happened in other places too. And you're probably going to, in the back of your mind, you know, I'm going to talk about Africa, because when stuff happened in Africa like this, no one was making as much noise as we seeing the noise being made right now in over Ukraine. Why do you think now is so much more loudspeaker approach to the attack on Ukraine from Russia than a lot of the conflicts we see going on in Africa? And of course, what I'm hearing all the time is because they're white or because of their religion. Do you think I'm anywhere correct in that topic, in that sense? It can be hard, man.
I think what you mentioned with religion or race or ethnicity, that is a factor for the population in different countries and how much they might feel connected or care. That's valid. But I think for policymakers, for generals, for strategists, for the leaders, at the end of the day, that isn't what matters more. I think what matters more to them is, if there's a conflict, how much does it disrupt their economy,
Mm-hmm.
their interests, their
Right.
sphere of influence?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Europe has power. Might not be the power it had 200 years ago, but it has economic power. And it still has a decent enough military power if you add them all together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Granted, they've kind of veered away from using war as a means of securing their foreign policy objectives for the most part.
Or colonization, right?
Well, yeah, or not using colonization, except maybe France, arguably, because they're still doing stuff in Africa. They haven't stopped. But that said, not so we don't go on a tangent. The war in Ukraine is a direct threat to the European Union and what they represent, right? And it's a direct challenge to their situation, because for the longest time, with the belief that they didn't want to antagonize Russia,
Right.
they did not accept Ukraine into the fold, so to speak, right? Because Russia's claim is that if NATO and EU creep further and further east, that's a direct threat to Russia. But it's not NATO creeping east so much as a lot of Eastern Bloc countries want to join the EU.
And let me put you on hold here, because a lot of people in the United States, for example, they know doodly squat about the history of the region.
Right.
All right, especially the recent generation, they don't understand the situation between not only Crimea but Moldova, right, and Belarus and stuff like that. And this is something that I enjoyed reading about in university. This is the thing that I think when people start refracting on history to explain that they have how would you say, the historical cultural rights to something, it's quite, it can be misleading. Luckily, I worked in Romania, right? I worked in Romania, in Moldova, and I got, people in Moldova speak Romanian as far as I can see. And I've met Russians in Romania. And it's just when you make these cultural references and use it as a tool to say that this is part of your nation, and this is what the neighbors next door is doing in some ways, it's just the truth. I got some comments here, but finish up your comment, because I just cut you off there. So please forgive me. I'm going to bring in some comments here.
So basically, I mean, at the end of the day, Ukrainian exports and Ukraine's position in European, Middle Eastern, African geopolitics and economics is very important, right? A ton of Ukrainian exports go to the Middle East. A ton of its wheat goes to the Middle East. It goes to Africa, right? So we're probably gonna see a lot of starvation, unfortunately, because of that. We have Ukraine basically at the doorstep of the rest of Europe. So, I mean, obviously now Europeans are going to get concerned. I see a comment about Xinjiang. I mean, Xinjiang exports aren't directly, affecting European pockets as much, so we just don't care as much.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's what it is. Now, as far as the sort of claims of ethnic solidarity and all being part of the Russian sphere and all that, I mean, there's a historical fact, and then there's what kind of world do you want to build, right? Historically, Russians and Ukrainians were once considered one much more similar people, right?
Correct.
The Kievan Rus back in the medieval times, the sort of Slavic Nordic fusion culture that occurred, that created Russians, right? That was centered around Kiev. And when the Mongols came in, a lot of that power base went north, eventually to Moscow. But they were a related people. But things started to diverge centuries ago with what was happening on the steppe, which later became Ukraine, with the formation of the Cossacks, with the expansion of the Russian Empire. The Ukrainians ended up having a slightly different tilt. And then with the USSR falling apart 30-some years ago, things diverged, as things do, right? And so just because someone is related to you doesn't mean you have the right to go in guns blazing and conquer them. Like, if me and you are relatives and I wanted your house, I don't get to kill you for that.
We're not relatives?
Based on a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
It sounds sweet. It's like, oh, reunify the people, we're all brothers. But it's not sweet in execution, because there's no consensus building. There's no respect towards individual thought.
What do you decide? What do you define as consensus building? Because the neighbors next door, their method of so-called consensus building is, of course, muffled and hidden behind different kinds of let's just call it what it is, propaganda, that it causes people to become so blind. This is something. So can you define how you define it?
Well, I would say this. I mean, basically it comes down to, if Ukrainians all wanted to be part of the Russian Federation, then there would be no conflict. there's conflict because one group, led by Putin and his oligarchs, wants to take over Ukraine and its people, and it's most of its people, except maybe some people in the Donbass region, don't want to be. Oh, plain as that. Same. It's that simple. So consensus would be: is the Russian system so superior in what it can offer to Ukrainians than anything else, than being independent, than being part of Europe, than being part of whatever, that they're like, well, the choice is clear. I would much rather be part of the Russian Federation because life is so much better there. But it's not. It's just fucking not. Like this is not trying to throw shade at the Russian Federation. It's just it is what it is. Like 40% of people don't have internet. Fucking spousal murder or whatever. You know, men killing.
I was looking at that 2 weeks ago.
Alcoholism, economic prospects, the education is going to shit. I mean, come on, this is not the system you want to be part of. So how can you blame them? Even if they're like, you know, only like 5% different culturally. Who the fuck cares?
Maybe even less than that. Maybe even less than that.
But they will find every percentage difference between the two to help bolster their drive for being truly independent, not just independent on paper, on the map, but being attacked by Russia, but being able to assert their space because the Russian system is not what they want to be a part of. Clearly, right?
At least this particular time.
This is not me speaking. This is Zelensky. This is all the bullets. This is all the bombs. This is all them speaking, right? I
forgot about Zelensky. I forgot about Zelensky.
Props to him.
I don't care what
side, I don't care what side you're on, man. That guy has balls.
He's locked up, and he won't get out anytime soon. But the thing is that in some cases you can respect Putin's. He got some cojones, to do what he did right after meeting with Xi Jinping, and I don't know how much Mr. Xi knew about this. If not, it's possible he didn't know a thing about it. But the thing that I see is how he's able to control the media in Russia. I mean, you've probably heard some broadcasters in Russia, protesting and they can't even call it a war. They call it special operations.
You put war and Ukraine together. I think you get 10 years. I think that's what it is at right now.
15 now. It's 15. And what is this? I don't know where this comes from. Seems the Chinese Communist Party references Mongol for anything. Oh goodness, I don't get that.
I mean, I don't think they even need that to justify. I mean, the fact they want to keep the fact that Taiwan declaring it itself as like Taiwan is breaking the rules to them already says a lot, because essentially their claim to it to here is shaky. It's based on the fact that there's an unfinished civil war between them and the nationalists, right? You can argue one's like the communist leaning one, the one's the fascist leaning one, but whatever, right? One of them came here because they lost on the mainland. So honestly, their whole use of history and cultural continuity and ethnicity is all really just to manipulate the narrative to their advantage. And to be fair, anyone does that. It's just in this case, it's the bully that's doing that, right? So, CCP rhetoric. They hate the Manchus. They hate the Qingdao. But they love the borders. They love the 9-dash line. They love the Manchus took half of Taiwan. They love that they conquered Xinjiang for them. They love that they conquered Tibet and Mongolia, which actually got its own independence later, thanks to Russians.
You better bite your tongue. The CCP has never invaded another sovereign nation. You have to bite your tongue. You have to stop saying things like that.
Yeah, because it's all China. It's all China. So yeah, even the parts that aren't China are China. So I don't even care about any of that. Yeah, there were historical borders, and they fucking change. At one point, Mongolia was half of Asia. borders do change.
They
Okay.
do.
Secondly, yes, there is such a thing as ethnicity, and yeah, Taiwan is what 98% of the people here have most of their ancestry from China. I can't like there is a lot of intermixed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the majority of their DNA would come from China, and within China, mostly from southern China and blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
Well, why does it matter though? Why does it matter? Why does DNA determine what government rules you? You know what I'm saying? That shit doesn't hold water at the end of the day.
Of course, I we can understand that today, but even 60 years, 70 years ago, the ways of thought, the patterns of way people are thinking, how you doing, Earl, was not like that.
And I
The
think
thing is now, yes.
keep going, keep going. I think
The
you're about
thing,
to
the
say
thing is, I want to say to you now is, I mean, to most people is where do you go from here? We know that even United States, you know, they go with the John Wayne attitude, boom, boom, that's, you know, but then and you mentioned earlier how nations became more technologically advanced, they may not be a pariah in a particular field, especially militarily, financially, but they are able to protect themselves now in ways that you know, a nation just need one nuclear missile to destroy everybody's crap. You know, that's the whole one bowling pin needs to be hit and everything's come crumbling down. The thing is, what do we do from here now? We spend a lot of time talking about you did this to our ancestors, this, and that. Yes, we understand it's painful, but the thing is, they're not coming back. So the thing is we have to do now, in my opinion, is avoid the mistakes that each and every one of us made in the past, reset, respect. That's it. It may sound simple.
Fundamentally, though, and you said, okay, the thinking was different 50, 60 years ago. You're absolutely right. And if you think about what Putin is doing, he assumes that because Ukraine is a fledgling democracy and many of these are corrupt, and Ukraine was, I mean, now there's not much room for corruption, but because everyone's in survival mode, but Ukraine wasn't a model democracy. And his assumption was like so many others, like Iraq, like Afghanistan, like any other, the guy on top is just going to take all the money and run, right? Which is what happens in most of these cases. He didn't think that this guy would sit down and stand for the people. Okay, so that's one. Two, he's cut from the cloth. He's ex-KGB. It's FSB. Okay. He's cut from the cloth of the Soviet Union, which is under the assumption that its geopolitical rivals are constantly conspiring against it. It's under the assumption that it needs to expand and control its borderlands, up all the way to Poland, all the way to Romania, all the way to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all the way down to Mongolia, Manchuria. Right? It's gotta secure all of that. It's working off of that mindset, and it's working on the assumption that the people need to be controlled and harnessed, not the people's collective will is expressed, adjusted, adhered to, and harnessed in a particular direction that works for both state and people.
What do you use to what is being used to define or to tag what is the collective will of a certain nation's people in some cases? Because a lot of it is made or molded in a way to get people to proclaim certain things and they don't even know it.
Yeah, so here's the I think here's a fundamental difference. The way Russia and China are doing things is very much top-down consolidation of power, and it does not allow for the sort of collective conversation to happen. Whereas, say in the United States, there is a collective conversation. Right now, it's more just arguing and shit talking all over the place. But there is a collective conversation, and what a lot of I think, I'm guessing, based on the way they do things, what a lot of the Russian leaders and Chinese leaders don't understand is when America is arguing with itself, or say when Taiwan is arguing with itself, when the people are in the Senate throwing fists and throwing paper at each other and blah blah blah, right? It's beautiful, the signs of a young democracy. Yeah, I love watching it, but just because it's messy doesn't mean the country is out of order, because this is the process.
It doesn't mean the country is out of order.
Right. This is the process of people who don't agree about how to tackle a problem, trying to get their views across and build consensus within the community.
Okay.
And when it's as polarized as in Taiwan, basically a kind of pro-China anti-war party versus a pro-Taiwan and hopefully no war, but we better prepare for one party, it's going to get very divisive. When it's America and it's blue and red and that fucking circus that's going on there, it's going to be very divisive, right? And they're tapping into two significantly different ways of thinking, a liberal way of thinking and a conservative way of thinking. And these aren't inherently wrong, and they probably need each other. But the house is going to look messy because the collective conversation is, because you're talking about serious topics, right? But this doesn't mean that the foreign policy or the military is always as out of order as the society looks to be. So the US can argue about the ethics of abortion while sending weapons to Ukraine. Just because the house looks out of order doesn't mean it actually is. The house was out of order, 9/11 happens, Americans are ready, right? Americans, Taiwanese, a lot of these countries can turn on a dime a lot faster than I think a lot of these regime leaders expect.
Americans are like a bunch of rowdy brothers together, but once it gets to a point where one brother is harmed, everybody focuses on one thing. I think
not always in the best way.
Yeah,
what they do, right? And so I think this is one of the things that societies are inherently top down in terms of how power and this decisions are made. Is if everything is planned from the top and the people are just supposed to surrender their personal sovereignty, go along with the promise of a better life. One, that's shaky ground, because if you're not providing that better life, there better be some enemy, outside enemy, making it not
made up enemy. Okay,
you have to have a scapegoat, real or not, and that leads to problems, because now you have to fight enemies somehow. You have to show your people you're strong if you're not making the economy better, right? You have to do this because you control everything. There's no one else.
That's the boogeyman thing. That's the boogeyman thing.
Right. In Russia, it's all Putin's people, right? And now CCP, it's apparently the people in power are mostly Xi Jinping's people. So who's to blame? Now they have to create a boogeyman. They have to say, oh well, there's this island where these people have betrayed the Chinese gods and infiltrated and mentally colonized by America. But it's because this kind of messaging and this type of society has been enforced for so long, it's hard for people to imagine that, say, Taiwanese people or Ukrainians might actually have the will to think about this for themselves. And
especially now,
and to have a collective conversation, whether it's in their living rooms or while they're chewing pinlang and watching TV, or while they're arguing about politics, about is potential death and destruction worth the possible freedom on the other side of it, to be recognized among nations. Is the Chinese system something we would rather join? All that nationalistic or DNA, whatever, old borders, fuck that, whatever. De facto, there is a state running here, right? And it is on Taiwan. So does it want to surrender itself to the Chinese system? Well, people saw Hong Kong and they said, Even if I thought it could work, now I'm not so sure. Right? Okay, Inner Mongolia, maybe they're like, okay, whatever, Xinjiang, Tibet, okay, that's far away. Hong Kong's right there. And Hong Kong, it's just, it's if you're gonna take the ethno-nationalist angle on this, you'd be like, well, they're Chinese too.
Boom.
So if you treat other Chinese that way, why do we want to be that kind of Chinese? Why do we want to be a part of that?
Especially now when we were able to build up relationships, like this is what you pointed to, because it's so close. People have been able to do business right across the street in Hong Kong, and meeting people there on a personal level.
Yep.
So this is causing them to, what is that? Fanxing.
Yeah.
To refer.
It's just one of those things where the irony is, I think because I'm not there, I wasn't raised there, I'm not part of the Chinese Communist Party or the Russian oligarchs, but the ruling culture seems to treat people on the outside in the same kind of manner they would treat their own, right? Within their countries, because the system that they've created, they can use a lot of fear intimidation tactics. They can poison parties. They can do all that stuff. That will rile up a certain crowd that's ultra nationalist within. They'll be, oh yeah, we're strong. Oh yeah, we're dealing with the traitors, whatever. And then the ones who aren't are going to be in fear, and they're not going to speak out because they'll get grabbed.
Okay,
right?
well, I'm losing you a little bit here.
But on the
I'm
side,
using you there. Come on, you get a little bit of Wi-Fi
okay.
spankle there. You probably got.
But if
I'm
you
losing you a little bit there.
Use that kind of intimidation on people who consider themselves free peoples, it doesn't work the same way. They don't respect intimidation.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
Actually, I missed about a minute of what you're saying there.
To sum it up,
okay.
They can use a lot of propaganda and intimidation within their countries to get what they want. When they use that as part of their foreign policy, as part of their diplomacy, when their diplomats, threaten other people on Twitter, that doesn't garner the respect of people who consider themselves free people.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's that takes a lot of work.
They keep doing it, and there's a game they're playing. Part of this is for their own people to make it look like they're acting tough against the West or whatever. But then there's another side that they think somehow this is assisting their geopolitical goals. They think somehow that they're showing the world, like, don't mess with us.
They're showing their people, or giving a perception of they're showing the world this is a falsified perception.
So what Putin has done, which I don't know if it's just delusional or ballsy or both, is he's followed through on it.
Yep.
And he probably, again, like I said, expected Zelensky, like many other people in that kind of position, to just grab the money, right?
And run. Yeah.
That's what most of them would do. And I think in his head, he genuinely believed that many Ukrainians would fold. Because again, these leaders of these countries aren't separated from their national programming.
Okay.
They're the ones creating it. They're in it, right? I don't know how much of it they personally believe, but at least it seems in Putin's case, strategically believed that the Ukrainians would fold. And they haven't. So here's another thing, though. I don't know if it's delusion. I don't know if it's balls or if it's desperation, because Russia's demographics don't look good. Their population is aging. They're not having enough kids, and the areas where they're having kids are mostly in the Siberian or like Islamic areas, which worries the ethnic Russians.
Right.
So they're like, hey, if we're gonna secure that area, we've got a certain 5 to 10 year prime time of having the most young men that we can recruit.
One generation.
Right. And if you think about it, China has the same thing coming.
Yes, that's it. Knocking on wood.
Same thing coming, because the one-child policy, then their crash is going to be worse. And you got what, like the PLA, 70-80% of them are single, only childs. And you consider that 80 to 90% of their oil has to pass through the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
Well, right. Maybe they got a year or two as reserve. Maybe they got a year or two emergency reserve of grain. I don't know.
I think it's 8 weeks.
I don't know. I don't know what numbers actually mean, give or take how much. But despite those reserves, I mean, China is not the China of old where it could be relatively self-sufficient. They've got to import tons of technologies and resources to keep an industrial economy going. They don't have that oil. They don't have the best semiconductors. They don't have a lot of even a lot of the military uses a lot of Russian tech, right? And so China also has a window where it has enough manpower that can throw away, 15% of the PLA just trying to cross the ocean. In another 30 years, they might not have that anymore, right? And they're at a point now where militarily they might be able to take Taiwan and take a horrible economic hit that the party may or may not survive.
That's the underlining shaky part. In a lot of ways,
the more they rattle the saber, the more hypes everyone up about this stuff, the more pressure the leadership has to deliver on the promises.
Yes,
you can't tell everybody for the last 20 years that we could take Taiwan in a day. Like we could do it. All right, then people are wondering,
you do it, yeah, and that crashes the whole hype, the whole party falls.
Exactly, and because the economy is not good now, and the zero COVID policy is wreaking havoc.
Yeah,
and so generally in these type of situations, authoritarian regimes tend to pick a war.
And you see that in a lot of places in history.
Yeah, every time authoritarian regimes are getting stressed on the inside, if they don't find a way to funnel the people in a certain direction, they're going to implode, right? So it's a tense situation. I think that I hope the U.S. has observed from abroad that one, incremental aid and collaboration is probably better than just going in guns blazing like used to. Two, that appeasement is probably not the way to go about it. Hopefully the world has learned that, because that was the whole story with
okay,
right? And then their whole thing was like, oh look, there's Germans in this part of Sudetenland, and same kind of rhetoric, the same pattern.
The smartest thing the neighbors next door could have done is said, Taiwan, you be you, be me, we be us. Let's work together. If the neighbors next door and the wonderful population here work together, I'll tell you, speaking. Sorry.
You know what would be so ironic if, like 40 years ago, if the CCP promoted Taiwanese independence. That would be. But
if the two got together and said, okay, we're going to use our skills to take over, to really boom up the IT technology, and we do it peacefully, the West would be crapping in their pants.
Yeah,
it could have happened.
But unfortunately, the Chinese governing system, the distribution of power, the way they do things is just too predatory for foreigners and parasitic for.
Okay, parasitic is something, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So like any company that goes there has to have a Chinese partner, and a lot of the technologies get stolen. They don't respect these patents, and so it doesn't build trust, right? And that's another thing. Maybe to the Chinese company, they're like, we got ahead. We took that. Yeah, we got that. But you didn't build collaboration. You didn't build partners. You didn't build allies. You taught the world that you're a scheming bastard and we can't stay away because there's just too much money potential. But if we have to, we will.
Don't drop your pants. Yep.
Well, so that's the thing. You look at China's so-called allies. It's not looking great. Laos and Cambodia are basically just bought out by them.
Yep.
Maybe the recent Filipino election was also with some of their money involved. Nepal has Maoists have taken over and China is backing them. Pakistan is not known for its good human rights record. It's not a great. I wouldn't say that's a great partner for exporting the greatness of modern day China if your partner is Pakistan.
Okay.
Right. I mean, given Pakistan's involvement with Taliban, given Pakistan's involvement with basically killing off most of the educated people and wealthier people in Bangladesh, and all that stuff. I mean, it's not a great track record, and that's their main ally.
Yeah.
I mean, China doesn't build good partnerships.
Well, collaboration is important, partnership is important, but I think we should back out the door. I've been running a mouth here. And in many ways, we have to thank Putin and Xi Jinping. We have to thank them in many ways because they got people who normally wouldn't, under normal situations, work together. We got the Quad working together now. It probably wouldn't have happened if everything was quiet. You got European nations, Finland, Sweden, now working together in a particular way. They are, you can call them uniters in some ways,
I mean, I saw a meme literally 20 minutes before I hopped on with you that Putin should be given like NATO Salesman of the Year, right? They're like, see, this is why we need NATO. This is why we need because of this motherfucker right here. Honestly, and in the grand scheme of history, I mean, people don't, how do I say, violence or the threat of violence can bring out the worst in people, but it brings out the best in people as well, right? And collaboration is one of mankind's virtues, right? We got plenty of xenophobia, racism, prejudice, willingness to kill people for speaking different. I mean, most ethnicities have had some stage like that where we're just basically barbarians.
Yes. Yeah.
We also have love, we have compassion, we have empathy, we have collaboration, we have partnership. That's part of what we are too, right? And so
people have a lot more in common than they think.
Yes, 100%. I think, like you mentioned with the Quad, I mean, if it wasn't for China under Xi Jinping taking this turn in terms of foreign policy, India, Australia, Japan, the US, countries in the middle, Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan, necessarily view each other as partners rather than say rivals. Right? So NATO Salesman of the Year, yeah. No, Putin is doing a great job getting everybody to work together. But at the same time, it's not just good feelings. It's also action, right? And with the way I think our economies are intertwined, there's going to be a party of people or a group of people within any country that will be resistant to putting the foot down when the time comes. Because they say, I got a lot of money there. It's like, then we got to decide, say 23 million people in Taiwan, are they and everything that they represent and everything they're connected to in Asia and abroad worth it or not? And to most Taiwanese, it is. To the Biden administration and the Pentagon, it seems like it is. To the Quad, it seems like it is. And at least from my perspective, being Taiwanese American, optimistic. We're not. The storm clouds haven't passed, but they're getting darker. But
well, I try to stay optimize myself. Let's back out of here with this comment that I started off with. JD, sorry for being late. Okay, Fajana. Biden said this many hours ago about United States coming to militarily to the aid of Taiwan if the neighbors next door knock on the door. And by him saying that, it just sticks out the chest of the United States and do the pounding and all this stuff. But it does makes the porcupine quills over Taiwan a little bit longer and a little bit more in the front of people's eyes or in the front of the lips of the politicians in the United States.
Yes.
What do you think? And there are some Taiwanese that are like all of a sudden jumping up and making a lot more noise who really rather want to stay free or independent, which I just think they should just keep keep it mutually respectful and let Taiwan stay self-sufficient. I want to hear your opinion then on what you hope the people here, what stance they take without putting themselves in danger, or how would you say, causing other nations to be using their situation as something that they can use for their own goals. This is kind of hard for me because we know what's happening in Ukraine. A lot of people here are looking at Ukraine to push certain political, how would you say, or change particular government wording internationally. What do you hope for? What do you think can be done? How about that?
My hope is that whatever the outcome is, that Taiwanese people get to decide. And if that's with voting, or if that's with howitzers and bullets and drones and bombs and Air Force and all that, then it is what it is. At the end of the day, although I have my own personal opinions, in order for Taiwan to not be totally controlled or become a total pawn of anyone, and right now today, obviously, that's China and the United States, Taiwanese people need to stand up and decide and keep standing up and keep deciding whenever it's necessary. So in this case, it's the ultimate question. Do we want to have our society that we've built up, and especially in the last 30 years after martial law, really progressed? Do we want to keep that? As far as how China has been historically and how China is now, it seems like we probably can't have what we have under Chinese rule. Can we have what we want if we are, let's just say, basically like a US territory? Maybe, or maybe not, because then we're sucked into everything that the US is involved with. We lose the freedom to decide, right? You know, American Samoa doesn't get to decide. Guam doesn't get to decide. Puerto Rico, I mean, they get to sit in the government, but not really.
Right.
Native American reservations don't get to decide shit.
Right.
So I think ultimately it's just like I said, I would like Taiwanese people to be able to decide and boldly walk in whatever direction that is. Personally, I see a lot of potential for Taiwan to be a beacon of democracy, of capitalist-leaning democracy, perhaps tempered by other things that can mitigate some of its excesses, some of its problems. I can see Taiwan being a great hub of innovation and exporting technologies and jobs and opportunities to Southeast Asia, which is growing. I mean, don't sleep on Indonesia, fourth largest nation on earth. Also from Sumatra to Papua New Guinea, it's almost the size of the US lengthwise.
That's true.
And it's coming up. I see Taiwan possibly being a leader in all of that. And also for people from all over to come to Taiwan, right? You're here, right? And if Taiwan is a recognized nation with positive diplomacy, officially recognized diplomatic relations with other nations, and is a positive contributor medically, technologically to the East Southeast Asian region, and maybe even to Latin America, the Caribbean, which it already is kind of doing. That is, in my opinion, both for the Taiwanese and for people in general, the better outcome, rather than just letting Chinese leadership jerk themselves off, knowing that they finally conquered Taiwan. Fuck them. Like, at the end of the day, if you respect human rights, then you would want the people to choose. And if ultimately that's China, they choose to be part of China, then that's that. They choose to be part of China. But just like Ukraine, there's a reason they were trending towards the West. There's a reason they would rather have joined NATO. Despite all the cultural similarities, despite all the time spent together as one country under the Russian Empire or the fucking Golden Horde or USSR, since about 30 years ago, they've been trending a certain way. Taiwan, likewise, since about 30 years ago, white terror is over, right? By Kongbu, has been trending a certain way. When they weren't forced under a Chinese nationalist regime to behave a certain way, they start trending the way that they have been.
A topic came up here, and I'm going to put it up real quick, then we use it to bounce out the door because we've been here for a little over an hour. But this comment is quite interesting here by JD to Earl, who's in, I think, Washington State right now. The thing people miss, however, is the U.S. has its own interests in the area, which happens to align nicely with Taiwanese independence. I don't know. I cannot agree with that. I cannot agree with that 100%. But it's self-determination is what Taiwan is at right now. What you define as self-determination it can be a tricky topic. But I just hope people understand that, like I always say, people have a lot more in common than we think. And if we just get above that, maybe we can save a lot of time and a lot of energy in killing each other and just learn to live with each other. That's what I can say.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is like, it's like girls in high school. There's one girl who doesn't like it and another girl is shining and he's like, nobody can talk to her. Nobody can call her by her real name. Nobody, right? There is clearly one aggressor here. Now you can say, don't piss off the aggressor. But at some point, if the aggressor is getting too aggressive, you decide if you want to stand up or if you bend over.
That's the warrior in you.
I'm just saying, in the world of geopolitics and game theory, where war is just another option, choosing when and how you stand up and when and how you bow out is very important. And I think, however, the Taiwanese people here, our people decide, is gonna matter a lot. I think if we bow out, I hope the regime is gentle.
I'm not going to tell you what that sounds like. I'm not going to go that way. Look,
but we know the alternative is can be equally, if not more, violent. Even if there is the light at the end of the tunnel, even if there is the sunshine after the storm.
Right.
So it's not an easy decision, but it's one for historical and other reasons being forced upon Taiwanese people. And I think what Biden said is reflecting the geopolitical realities. Do I think the U.S. has some amazing partnership with Taiwan, has Taiwan's best interests at heart? Maybe, temporarily.
Okay. Maybe.
Maybe. Temporarily, maybe. But that's the world of competing powers. That's what it is. Yeah. So hopefully Taiwanese get to choose, and hopefully their choice, our choice, works out better for most. Hopefully. I have my opinion. Like I said, you can already tell where I'm at. I have my own opinion. But ultimately, I want the Taiwanese people to be able to choose that above all, because that's what makes today's Taiwan what it is. Right.
No, I agree. I agree on that. But peace. Well, look, thanks for jumping in here, because, I should have, if I would have known that the prayers would say something like that, or maybe he slipped his tongue. I don't know. But, I'm glad thanks for joining in here. JD, he couldn't jump in. Maybe he had some technical problems. But look, thanks a lot, man, for joining. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day for joining me here, okay? And I have something out in 2 days, so watch that. And look, Vincent, I'll talk to you later, okay? Hey, guys, visit his channel. Yeah, it's The Wandering Warrior on YouTube, and it's the.wandering.warrior on Instagram, if you're on that platform. All right, man. You take it easy. And everybody else, thanks for joining Earl. JD, Wu Gui, Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost, I don't know. Thanks a lot for joining. Talk to you guys later. Peace.